Hey, what's good, YouTube? This is Lewis from Uplink, and I want to bring to your attention another Twitter thread you might have missed. And I think it's worth your attention, especially when it's a quick read, quick look. On Tuesday, a bill was introduced by Senators Cynthia Lummis, and Kirsten Gillibrand. And this was the crypto bill that was highly anticipated. So let's dive into this summary that I don't know if I'm saying this right, Namcios. Go ahead and give him a follow. He put together for us. Okay, first up, Senator Cynthia Lummis, I'm going to go with that for now on, has officially released her landmark bill covering Bitcoin and digital assets. Here are the major points in the bipartisan bill introduced with Senator Gillibrand, a thread. So, and I'll provide some comments where I feel appropriate as we move on. So, medium of exchange. The bill encourages the usage of Bitcoin and digital currencies as a medium of exchange. It provides a tax exemption for transactions up to $200. So, that is an important one. We're going to highlight that. Commodity or security. The bill defines a framework for differentiating which digital assets are commodities and which are securities. It uses the Howey test. If you're not familiar with that, the SEC uses this test that determines if an asset is a security or not. So you go down through the list for the Howey test, and if it hits so many of the marks, I believe it makes it a security. Could be worth researching sometime. But for now, the Howey test to determine that an ancillary asset is not inherently a security. An ancillary asset is an intangible, fungible asset that is offered, sold, or provided to a person in connection with the purchase and sale of a security through an arrangement or scheme that constitutes an investment contract. So, and I think this is important because if a token had a pre-sale, that's not the end of the story, but this certainly gets the attention of that right away. So, to be classified as a security, the digital asset must provide the holder with a debt or equity interest in a business entity, liquidation rights, or entitlement to interest or dividend payments from an entity, profit or revenue share in an entity derived solely from the entrepreneurial or managerial efforts of others or any other interest in the entity. So this is very interesting because many altcoins are going to fit this definition. That doesn't mean they all do, and it is pretty interesting that like a pre-sale alone may not, you be interesting and get a lawyer to weigh in on this, but just a pre-sale with nothing that's given later, and say a decentralized protocol may not fit there. But the problem is someone had to issue it in the first place. And so one problem with this, I think, which would be an issue, is liquidity. Pre-sale happens before there's liquidity. Someone has to seed that liquidity. It's usually the foundation or whatever team plus the VCs, all right? Well, that could be an equity interest. And if they seeded it with the majority, you can't really say that's decentralized. You could say those are business entities, all right? So that's a problem. Liquidation rights, there's plenty of these shitcoin protocols that actually do use arbitrage to provide liquidation rights, and money markets, and there's plenty of places. So you've got that. Dividend payments from an entity. I mean, staking, right? That could be a big pain point for the interpretation of the bill after, like, let's say the bill is passed, and how do you treat staking in this definition? So if you are in other tokens that are not Bitcoin, these are concerns, all right? But I'll say that it's not as harsh as, say, the SEC interpretation of it. So digital assets not fully decentralized and which benefit from entrepreneurial and managerial efforts that determine the value of the assets but are not debt or equity. Okay, here we go. We're getting somewhere. Or don't create rights to profits. I didn't even talk about that. Governance tokens. If you have governance tokens that pays you in rewards from their fees, well, there you go. That is rights to profits. And that's a slippery topic too, because they often pay you in said made up token. They're not paying you literally with the fees. So that would be interesting. Or other financial interests in a business entity are not securities if disclosures are filed with the SEC twice a year. Really? And we're just going to end it there? That's it? So I could have a governance token and take my trading fees. I'm not even giving the trading fees to the governance token holders. They're holding thin air token that's backed by the seeded liquidity, half Ether, or maybe even worse, half the gas token of that chain. And so they're holding this token. I'm not using the fees. It's not like they buy back their own token to provide more in the liquidity. It's absolutely insane. So anyway, there you go. Just SEC twice a year. That should be interesting. The presumption that an ancillary asset is a commodity can be appealed in court. Okay. So if the SEC wants to claim that a given digital asset is a security and not a commodity, it needs to go to court. Well, every person should have their legal representation, so that's fair. In sum, the majority of large digital assets would be classified as commodities under the text introduced by Senator Lummis and Senator Gillibrand. Naturally, the SEC will oversee the securities, whereas the CFTC will regulate the commodities. So the CFTC, I cannot remember, Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, I believe is what that stands for, will regulate the commodities. You can tell I never traded commodities. BTC and ETH are guaranteed as commodities. I think they had to make concessions on the ETH. Not sure that I agree with that. All the evidence is to the contrary that ETH is a commodity. So if you disagree, comment below, because I'm actually going to start doing a series of addressing shitcoiners' comments, because I don't have time. I see so many comments of like YouTube, social media, and then I get into these long back and forth threads, and it's really annoying, and it's not time efficient. So I'm just going to start doing videos. I'm just going to put people on blast, especially since I believe that a lot of people who are shitcoining are just not very educated. Okay, I don't think they come from engineering and technical backgrounds or economics backgrounds. Or there's so many people that I've met in the Bitcoin space who are like genuinely very smart, very educated, and even the ones who don't have maybe traditional education or have on-the-job training for technical and like industry certifications, even if they don't have that, they spend so much time studying Bitcoin, and in many cases, it's underlying technical mechanics, right, of how it all works, and they spend so much time learning about economics that they have become very much educated in the core material, I guess you could say, in their core competencies of those areas, right? And that's impressive. I don't often see that with people who are in DeFi to get rich or in NFTs. I just don't. I rarely see that. The developers themselves tend to be very smart. Although, hopefully one day they'll be guided back to putting those development skills towards, putting forward BIPs in the future or something, or apps, applications for Bitcoin holders and users or Lightning Network. I'm hopeful that these developers will leave one day and find their way. But yeah, I think we need to cultivate this culture of studying and learning in the Bitcoin community, because you don't see that as much on the altcoin side, and we really shouldn't scare them away. Okay, so I know there's this big thing about the credentialed, right? We shouldn't listen to the credentialed, and there's plenty of people in Bitcoin who are credentialed. All right, there's plenty of us who have engineering backgrounds, and you want to attract those people to the community. You don't want to push them away. So careful with that being elitist, and be welcoming of anyone who is keeping an open mind, and especially if they're sharp and they have this background that could really help the community in some way, or even the marketing, whatever. Moving on, Lummis Gillibrand grants the CFTC exclusive spot market jurisdiction over all digital assets classified as commodities. Exchanges will register with the CFTC to conduct trading activities and abide by some rules. U.S. Bitcoin spot ETF more likely if bill approved. And I think this is a personal statement that he's made, and that would seem to be true. I know that, was it Grayscale, just threatened to sue if their spot ETF gets denied. So bringing more attention to American people and bringing more pressure onto them. You know, I haven't liked these. I'll go back through and like all of his tweets here. I think we'll especially make it more likely for the bill to be approved. So SEC and CFTC are tasked with studying and reporting on the creation of a self-regulatory organization that could complement the regulatory work. I see this as nothing but positive. If you force studying and reporting on Bitcoin, people are going to be attracted to it. They're going to put aside their preconceptions and understand why it's the largest decentralized and most secure network on Earth. There's a reason for it. It's not a mistake. It's not because boomers are powering the network by running on fucking treadmills. There's a reason for it. They are also tasked with developing a set of cybersecurity guidances for digital asset service providers. I like this. Forcing anybody who wants to create applications, especially if they're going to start making, like, say, Web3 type applications on a Lightning network, right? If you're going to layer your, like, say, games, there's games on Lightning. They should make sure that, especially there's so many novices that who are going to slip up and fall prey to scams, or worse yet, there could be man-in-the-middle attacks with the front end for the application. There's plenty of things that can go wrong, right? That have nothing to do with the underlying base chain or the layer 2. So cybersecurity guidances, security practices, right? Something like the U.S. government uses these things called STIGs to have a framework for hardening, like, say, network devices and applications. At the very least, it gives people the same checkboxes at the minimum to go through. It's a very good thing. Energy. The bill also requires a study on the power consumption of digital assets. It'll seek to determine the best ways to ensure Bitcoin helps society move closer to climate goals with deployment of more renewables and clean energy and reducing energy waste. This, can't argue this statement. Well, there's a lot of ambiguity here, so I guess I'll leave it at that. I think Bitcoin is going to help society move closer to climate goals on the sort of, not risk reward, but on the energy draw. We'll say energy draw, right? Because I don't want to say emissions, because if you're not the power plant, right, you're not emitting. The devices themselves emit heat. That is their byproduct as they draw energy. All right, a load exhausts heat or emits heat. Okay, but miners are incentivized to seek energy at the cheapest places where competitors cannot go to, because all they need to bring is an internet connection. Right, so stranded energy sources fantastic places. More miners are going to those places for the benefit of all the benefits of Bitcoin, right? Self-sovereignty, and the security network, and all the things that go with that. So the benefit is much higher than the potential emission, right? Like carbon emissions, or in some cases where it is truly a renewable energy source. How could you argue with that? So the danger, I think, comes in is when regulation enforces this standard that would apply more to like loads that are placed on the electrical grid that requires a great carbon emission at the power generation source, right? And that they don't have as big benefits. So a cookie cutter, one size fits all regulation energy wouldn't be fair. You have to really research how energy applies to Bitcoin, and then focus the regulation around that. So miners, the bill provisions that miners are not to be seen as brokers, and Bitcoin obtained from their activities is not to be treated as income until converted into fiat currency like dollars. Oh, thank God that would be. For one, everyone knows this was ridiculous. You can't, it's the form of 1099. You can't issue a 1099 for a pseudonymous network of these transactions that you don't know where that address applies. It's impossible. And it's just so much easier to track the transactions when they're just converted into fiat, and effectively it is just simpler. And it's effectively the same thing, because you're only going to actually off-ramp it to fiat. What they should probably add is if you off-ramp it into anything else, gift cards, services, like if you are selling, like providing services for Bitcoin, or you sell your Bitcoin for services, then any of those off-ramps, that's where it should be done. All the transactions in between, even these tools, these wallet, these tools that can track your wallet and your exchange transactions, to even include like in DeFi, which you're never going to truly get it right, because the smart, we won't get into that, and NFTs, it's a nightmare to go through. The IRS isn't going to have the manpower to ever fully go through all of the transactions from someone's report that's generated from one of those tools. And it's just harder on both the regulatory body, right? Or I should say the enforcing agency, like say the IRS, and the taxpayer. It just makes it harder on everyone. If you only catch it at the off-ramps, it makes it easier. And then you don't have to worry about if you, let's say, need a Bitcoin loan and you deposit that and then get fiat dollars to go pay bills with. That makes it easier to not have to worry about that. It's being a taxable transaction. Or if you, say, bridge to Bitcoin to be wrap Bitcoin because you did the loan on some other platform, for instance. Wouldn't suggest it, but if you did, those are, even though it's considered wrapping the Bitcoin, it would be a taxable transaction, in likelihood. So this would just make everyone's life much easier. It also specifies that digital asset lending agreements are not taxable events. We just talked about that. Good. 401k, the bill requires a government accounting office to analyze the opportunities and risks associated with investing in Bitcoin and digital assets with retirement accounts. Findings are to be reported to Congress, Treasury Department, and Labor Department. So this is a good, fair. It's ambiguous, but it's a fair injection into the bill, probably to just prevent like an outright ban of Bitcoin in 401ks. This ensures that they actually research the effects of this and brings it to agencies so they can actually allow it into people's retirement portfolios, right? And not just knee-jerk react and say no. Consumer protections, the bipartisan bill will require providers of digital assets to disclose information about the product, including source code, versioning, and legal treatment of each digital asset. Okay. It's interesting because you'd have to go after providers for that, right? Now, if it's Bitcoin, it's simply just open source code. There's no one to provide that for. They can just simply access that information. Self-custody, the bill grants the right to a person to keep and control the digital assets they own. This is the most important one. This is hands down the most important one. No one should need explaining as to why that's important. Just we don't ever want it to be that you can only have it when it's custodied.
Lummis, here is your reminder. Plan for Diego's doctor's appointment next day.
I guess I better plan for the doctor's appointment the next day. And here, his final statement. He has a blog. He points to a blog post on Bitcoin Magazine because he's a Bitcoin Magazine writer. Other provisions include aspects on stablecoin, an advisory committee, and clear definitions for the digital asset space. Catch a more detailed breakdown in my latest article for Bitcoin Magazine. So, excellent thread. And check him out and follow. Also, go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe to our channel. Don't just watch. Go ahead and join us in the discussion. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.